What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Carpool Gaming. My name is Matt, and I'll be your host for this special event episode. Get strapped in, because we're going to be talking about PSVR2. I'm joined, as always, by the Supreme Court of Canada himself, Mr. Court Lalonde. What's up, Court?
I just realized getting strapped in. I guess like when you put the VR headset, you're getting strapped in.
Yeah, see, I did that
It's
on
not
purpose.
even a car pun this time.
Yeah, let's run with that. That was intentional, and I'm going to look great because of it. And this week, we are so absolutely excited to be joined once again by the tech with the specs himself, Mr. Steve Vegvari. Steve, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about PSVR2.
Dude, I love the energy. Thank you so much for bringing me on. I love chatting with you guys. It's always a blast hanging out with the two of you. So yeah, I'm stoked to be here to talk about PSVR2. I got it over here. I'm ready to pull it out. I'm not going to do it yet. People have to stick around a little bit. You know, I can't give them the juice too quickly.
No, we can't bust that juice out too quickly. The juice must be doled out in good measure.
Don't bust that juice too quickly.
Don't bust the juice at all.
No, if you bust that juice too quickly, nobody has a good time. It goes everywhere.
Wow.
Well,
preach.
Okay, so Court and I have not played PSVR2 as of yet. Steve, you've been playing it for a little bit, but before we get into the nitty gritty of PSVR2, I want to do a quick little, VR check-in. Where are we all at with VR as a whole? Have you played PSVR? Let's start there to kind of, show off why we're talking about PSVR2. So Steve, I'll start with you. What's your history with VR? Have you owned a PSVR1? Where are you at with it?
Yeah, I've been a huge believer in VR, dating all the way even further back from the original PSVR headset. I thought I still think that it has great potential within not only video games. I think video games is kind of actually limiting to VR. I think when you look at the potential in the entertainment space or just businesses in general, there's so much VR can kind of provide for our everyday lives, to be honest, and that extends even over to AR as well, or mixed reality. I love all that stuff. So when PSVR came out, at this point, what, in 2016?
2016,
yeah.
The year my daughter was born. So
I jumped on it right away. I thought it was a great little piece of tech, and in hindsight, it was. But it was held back substantially by archaic peripherals and just middling support.
A breakout box.
Yeah, the processing unit and stuff like that. It's funny. I went back just to pull it out, just to kind of like refresh myself of like the differences between the two. And as soon as I saw the coiled snake of cords and everything, I was like, oh man, we actually settled for this. Like, we actually plugged this into our PlayStation 4 time and time again to play Beat Saber. And
hey, we settled for a console that sounded like a jet engine, and we were like, this is fine. Like, think about it. You had a jet engine console, and when you plugged that PSVR in it, it was even louder.
But that's the thing, is that as much as we can knock it, at the time it was innovative for the console space, for being able to, go out into the store shelves, bring it home, plug it in, and have it for a living room. It was innovative. Now, flash forward in 2023, it's no longer acceptable to have something like that sit in your living room, attached to your console. So, there are a lot of upgrades have been made since PSVR, the original, came out, thankfully.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you are an OG adopter. Court, what about yourself? What's your VR story?
I had PSVR for a day. So the only reason I say that is a friend of mine, he wanted to buy it and he was away on vacation. So I was living in Milton at the time. My daughter was just born and I was home because my daughter was home. So I went and got it at the store for him. Like, I knew the guy at the local GameStop. Actually, the guy just followed me just recently on Twitter. We've been connecting again.
What's up, GameStop guy?
Cool. Yeah, his name's Tim. Great guy.
Tim,
I lined up and I went and grabbed it for him. And so I had it the whole day while he was at work. So my wife and I did PSVR Worlds, and I farted around with that. Went in like with the Shark Tank, and I truly enjoyed the experiences. I got to play Batman for a whole 10 minutes because I bought it just because I knew I would have it, and then he came home and I had to he came to my house. He's like, I want this set. I'm like, no, I never got it back from him. But my whole thing with it is I really like the experiences of it. I wasn't interested in playing a full game. Like, I know everybody's talking about Moss 2, like, and I looked at it, I was like, that's not probably what I'll play. Like, I'll play it if I can get it, but that's not, I don't think I can sit there and have that headset on me for that long period of time. I'm like half hour, 45-minute intervals of just experiences. I look at the Star Wars that's coming out, or the Jurassic Park that I know is on Oculus Quest. That looks very cool to me.
Mhm.
I don't know if I can sit there. It's all about the experiences, just having something different
Yeah.
and feeling that immersion that you can get with VR. So that's, to me, like, my friend of mine has an Oculus Quest, the wireless one,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I've played a lot of Star Wars and Beat Saber on it. I love, using a lightsaber. That's to me, like, if I could get a VR version of all like the things I grew up with, like Batman or Back to the like, that's just the coolest stuff ever. Just to be that thing. When you're
Mhm.
playing a video game, you don't always have that immersion, but with the VR, I think the immersion is more there. The first game I
Right.
bought pre-ordered for PSVR2 was the Kayak, because
Yep.
I'm like, I'm in on that.
You're
Yeah.
in on that. Yeah. As for myself, I similarly to Steve, like I've been a huge believer of VR for quite a long time. I remember when they were first doing like they were going around to different GameStops with the original PSVR, and I remember just dragging my
Oh,
wife
yeah.
at the time to like literally I went to like 2 or 3 of them in my area, being like, we're going to this one, then we're going to this one. I gotta play it again. She's like, please leave me at home. I'm like, no, you're coming. So like I was in full board from the beginning, picked it up day one. And like I've loved my time with it. I haven't played it as much recently just because, again, like Steve said, the setup was a lot, the tech, it kind of grew to be outdated as time went on. But like, I spent way too much time in Super Hot VR. Like I beat it on like that endless run, like what's called the
Yeah.
one life run. Like I spent hours upon hours in that game. Beat Saber is one of my favorite experiences. And like, like the OG Astrobot, there's so much fantastic content there that when the PSVR 2 was announced, and given the significant upgrades that seemingly that we're getting with it, I cannot wait. I'm absolutely ecstatic. There are so many, like I made a list of like 8 games that I'm like, if I review all of these, I would not be upset. Like that's a lot of
Right.
content, but I'm gonna, come on, let's bring it over here. So I can't wait. So without further ado, Steve, how is it? Let's just start with the most basic question before we get into the nitty gritty of the headset, the controllers, everything. How has your time been with the PSVR 2 so far?
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm thoroughly impressed with
Matt needs to take a moment now.
the tech. It's undisputed. It's a upgrade to everything that they did with PSVR, from just the design, the specs. If you want to go through the spec breakdown, even the fact that you no longer need a camera. Back in the day, we had to use the PlayStation camera with the Move controllers. Gone are the days of that. When I was going through like my actual review, like my written review of it,
Which, by the way, where can people find that real quick?
Oh yeah, you can find it on iPhone in Canada right now.
There you go.
Thank you. But I was going through it, and in my head I was like, PSVR was very much kind of like this middle ground where it kind of felt like it belonged to the PlayStation 4, but it also kind of felt like it belonged to the PlayStation 3 in many
Right.
ways, right? It kind of felt like this kind of in between generational kind of thing. This here, PlayStation 5, PlayStation VR 2, they have so much synergy, where the design of it, just the fact that they incorporated just the white and black color palette, stuff like that, it just makes sense. And just the fact that they were able to transition over to the haptics, the sense, the dual sense adaptive triggers and stuff like that. There's so much that makes this seem like, oh, this belongs to the PlayStation 5 family in unison. Like everything's kind of just working together. So just top level, like it feels like a very good upgrade to what we've already gotten in the past.
What games have you played?
So I've been trying to sink my teeth into Horizon Call of the Mountain first and foremost. Like I think that has my priority, but I also wanted to get jump around to other games. But a lot of the games I have on my catalog right now are games that I've either have played before or are available kind of elsewhere. So I put in time with Moss once again, Moss Book 2 as well, the Star Wars Beyond Galaxy's Edge. I can't remember the exact name.
Tales from Galaxy.
Tales from the Galaxy's Edge.
Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. Putting a lot of time with that. Kayak VR Mirage, kind of a weird name, but
yeah, I've got that pre-ordered.
Yeah, and then I have a bunch of other games and codes that have graciously come through my email since this time. I feel like this is kind of going to be like a hardware review goes out today, but then I also have to like follow it up with like a bunch of like software
Mhm.
impressions and everything. Cause again, there's a lot of games coming out right out of the gate, like 30 plus games. Granted, a lot of them are pre-existing, upgrades coming over from PSVR to PSVR2.
Mhm.
But if someone is just coming in brand new, fresh out of the gate with a VR headset, there's a lot to sink their teeth into. So I've kind of been tiptoeing around a lot of stuff, but Horizon Call of the Mountains definitely been taking a lot of my time.
Follow up is the have you had I know there was a lot of people talked about fatigue in PSVR 1.
Hmm.
The weight of the system on top of you. Have
Hmm.
you felt any of that yet? And what's the longest play session you've had?
So the longest play session, I've probably banked like maybe hour 15, and that's kind of been like pushing myself. That's when like I started getting like the eye fatigue and stuff like that.
Yep.
But in terms of your endurance of like being able to hold the headset on your head or the sense controllers and everything, everything's so ergonomic and comfortable.
Yes.
If it wasn't for the fact that, you have screens like, you know,
A centimeter
inches
from your
away
eye.
from your
Yeah.
eyes. Yeah. I think I could like live in this headset theoretically. Like it just feels comfortable. The cushions that go around your head feel very nice, especially for someone like me who wears glasses.
Yep.
I was super worried. I was like, is this gonna require me to take my glasses off? Which in that case, then I run into like headaches and stuff like that. Or can I just wear them? But then they start like, pressing down on the sides of my head and stuff. No worries there. So people with glasses, unless you have like a
Nice.
special like frame or something, I think you're fine. Yeah, I think it's more or less just the overall fatigue
Mhm.
that you'll just naturally get. I don't recommend people just stay in VR in perpetuity. I think take a break, touch some grass,
Yeah.
maybe after an hour or something, take it off. But yeah, usually about 45 minutes to an hour is what I use to dive in.
So, how's the actual headset so far? Because you mentioned the ergonomics, everything feels great, but like, we have a bunch of upgrades in here. Obviously, the screen is much clearer. We got, we got the 4K. We got like the haptics in the actual headset itself. Tell me a little bit about how those new features like elevate the experience.
I think again it feels like a next gen or at this point a current gen experience where haptics are just so subtle. When I'm playing stuff like Horizon Call of the Mountain, there's an enemy that kind of like circles around. I feel footsteps like kind of like tingle, not to
Ooh,
the point where it
wow.
feels like annoying
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
it's pressure sensitive or anything like that, but it almost feels like when you played Astro's Playroom and you felt like his feet like kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
run
yeah.
across the control. It felt like that, but like a kind of like across your head and stuff like
Like a
that.
spidey sense almost. Like it's just kind of
Ooh,
there.
Can we
yeah,
just can we
it's
just get
super
Spider-Man
cool.
in VR?
Oh, please, please.
Um. Oh,
You muted yourself,
you
Steve.
muted yourself.
I
Whoops.
I
Please.
just because that was on my thought there. I wish and I hope because we're getting Horizon, and you know what? I have to ask you: is Horizon a AAA VR?
Yes. And that's not even like an exaggeration or anything. I'm comparing it to PlayStation coming out of the gate and saying we have our Half-Life Alex
Okay.
uh,
Wow.
on day
Eh,
one.
High
do we
praise.
It
really?
is.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I'm not even being like facetious or trying to like gas the game up or anything like that. I really do feel like this game does as much as it can to demonstrate all the hardware innovations of the headset while also providing a AAA experience. It does a great job of being like, okay, so here's how to use the sense controllers and what you can theoretically get out of it, and same with like what other developers could potentially deliver down the road. But at the same time, this is a full game. It's not going back to what you were saying, Court. This isn't Arkham. This isn't the quote unquote experience where you
Right.
jump in for 2 hours and you roll credits. You're like, I lived in the world of Horizon. No, this is a very long game. I still
Wow.
haven't rolled credits on it because I'm jumping around
Right.
between games, but I've invested probably at this point 5 hours, and I'm still
Wow.
I want to
Okay.
say probably halfway through. I want to say that it's a beefy game, just based off
How
the way that it's kind of rolling out.
how is the immersion when you're climbing up the rocks? If
Oh
you
my
look
god.
down, is it like Jesus?
It doesn't give me like the vertigo, but the
Okay.
scale of it feels very much like, oh, this is in parity with Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. Granted, it's not an open world experience,
Right.
but you climb a mountain, you look over, and you're like, oh my god, these vistas are just gorgeous. And the right, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but in the game's like opening moments, you're sitting in a boat and you're being taken down this like little river and everything, and a tall neck comes out of the bush next to you, and just seeing the scale of that thing just like walk over you, and you're like, oh, this is what Aloy's been dealing with. I've been selling her short, because yeah, it just puts you in such a different perspective, like gives you a different perspective, puts you in a different train of thought when you're like exploring this world. It's nuts, honestly, but yeah, it very much feels like a AAA game that demonstrates everything that the hardware can do.
How's the motion sickness in it? Because I know for myself, like that's something that I struggled with a lot with the original PSVR, and like of course,
Yeah.
like eating ginger candies, having a fan on me. Obviously, like the VR legs of building up resistance to not getting sick in those is very real. And I know
Right.
like part of that was the limitation of the original PSVR. Part of that was a lot of developers developing in that space for the first time. How do you do it? So how's
Yeah.
your like? Are you prone to motion sickness? And then secondary question, have you felt much? How have you felt like the the enhancements to the whole thing have made it better? Like how has that been?
So motion sickness, yes and no. I don't think that I have like the worst cases
Right.
of it. I know a lot of people have in the past. Like I'll think back to when Ace Combat came out for PS VR, and as soon as I took off, I was like, nope, and I put it down and never touched it ever again. I was like, that's too real for me, and I do kind of worry about jumping into Gran Turismo 7. I feel like that might give me a similar effect.
Right.
Yeah, the
But for,
reviews for that have pretty much said you feel like you're driving a car.
yeah, so that one's a little wishy-washy in terms of what that'll do for me. But Horizon, zero motion sickness. I've been able
Nice.
to. I could theoretically push through like the eye fatigue and continue playing it
Mhm.
because I just don't feel any kind of motion sickness or anything because the movements are so smooth. Props to Gorilla and Fire Sprite for crafting like a very smooth and just a great experience in terms of not hitting the motion sickness. I think
Right.
everything just runs really well, especially when you use the right analog stick on the Sense controller to kind of like shift your viewpoint as well as like turning your head. It all feels very smooth and doesn't feel like
Nice.
the locomotion sets in. Where I do feel like it starts to is games like Star Wars, games like Jurassic Park, and especially Kayak, where I feel like their movements are too floaty and too fast.
Okay.
Horizon does a really smart thing in that it doesn't give you a run button, and most of the time, if I'm just walking around like the hub area, I feel like I'm going too slow. I'm like, oh man, like it's taking a while to get like over there where I should just be able to run over there. But again, they're combating motion sickness. I can tell that they're
Right.
slowing down the traversal in order to ensure that you're having a good experience. I go to Jurassic Park and I'm running through hallways, and immediately as I stop, my entire stomach goes,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, can't do that. So I got to take it a little slower. Same with Star Wars, where I'm like, okay, I got to take these corners a little slow in order to kind of balance that. Kayak VR, that one I think is a lost cause. Where as soon as I started racing someone, I was like, no,
Really, eh?
this ain't working for
Do
me.
you get car sick or anything like that, or like roller coasters? Nothing? No.
Nope.
Okay.
No,
Mm, there's-
it's all the disparity between like what the brain's reading with versus like what the body's reacting to
Yep.
for me. Which again is very common for people in VR. So I think it's going to be a case by case basis. What you experience is going to be very different for me, and vice versa. Some people might end up going into Horizon and be like, I cannot. There are moments where it's a little faster, where you're like sliding down like a rope. Across like a canyon or something that could upset someone's stomach, and I wouldn't put it past them. But I do think that in terms of like an experience, quote unquote, Horizon does the best job of ensuring, hey, we're gonna balance this out so that you can last longer in this world.
how easily is it to? We saw in the previews how you could map out the area And how long is the cord? Like I really, because for me, I want to put it in my office because my basement just doesn't have the room. And
Yeah.
I've from what can I have it plugged in and be far away from it, from the
Yes.
console itself?
Yeah. So I believe, and I'll pull it up here because it's actually comically large or long.
Yeah,
That's
show
The
us.
cord is. Yeah, here it is. Here's
Woo!
the headset itself. Oh, it's a beauty, right? It's just
Ooh, love it.
but the cord
I'll tell you,
is
I'll tell your
just
wife.
like it's
It's
like
lengthy.
it keeps going. I think they said it's 14 feet.
Oh,
that's
nice.
perfect.
So that's perfect for anyone with like a dedicated VR play space or something like that. I'm in a Toronto condo, so I don't have to
Exactly.
worry about that. But going back to your point about mapping out like your area and everything, PlayStation recommends like 3 feet by 4 inches by 3 feet by 4 inches for like a standing space game like Horizon is. So that's perfect for even like a smaller home. My problem with PlayStation VR, the original, was that I couldn't control any of that. It was basically move all your furniture, couch included,
Yes.
just to get enough room of like to play Borderlands. Where if I like reached a weird way, my gun would fly a different way and my hand would go this way. I'm like, I just can't do this. Like, I just don't have the room for this. Here, it's really no problem.
Nice.
Because everything is built into the headset itself. So while you're mapping out the ground, the headset maps out the walls, the ceiling, and everything like that. But majority of what it needs to do is just process the hand tracking and the eye tracking.
Nice.
As long as your hand isn't like reaching way past your virtual wall where there's no longer space, you're fine. And honestly, it's forgiving enough for people like me who live in like a smaller space for the living room. You're fine. Honestly, I'm really happy with how much freedom I feel like I have playing this.
So how are the controllers? Because obviously that's the other like major overhaul, not dealing with our little moves anymore from a day he's gone by. Everything obviously that they've overhauled the controllers from like the fingers to everything about it. How do the controllers feel? Tell me about the upgrades.
Dude, I love these little things.
That's
I
beautiful.
love them. Over the past week, I've kind of been toying around with this idea that what I think that the DualSense did for console controllers, this is doing for VR controllers, and that it's elevating it to the point where I didn't even like with things that I didn't even think about. Like the hand tracking is so like almost one-to-one. Where again, going back to Horizon, I feel like when I reach for a rock, I'm hitting it as intended with this, right? When I'm pulling my bow out of one shoulder and pulling an arrow out of my other shoulder, it feels like it should work. Like if I was doing it in real life kind of thing, you know what I mean? And just the fact that you have the adaptive triggers, you have the haptics running through it, it just feels like a very immersive experience, similar to the first time we all played Astro's Playroom and we're like, yo, we feel this little guy run across my controller.
Yeah.
Right? It felt like a very next gen experience, unlike something that we could have predicted. Similar here with the Sense controllers, where it feels very much like, oh, this is what we've been missing out on across all other VR platforms. It just helps so much that if I hit the front of my hand on a rock in Horizon, I feel that here. Like I feel it in my hand. And it feels like when you pick something up, you feel like you're holding something. I mean, obviously you're holding a Sense controller, but it feels very, very immersive. And honestly, it's that's the thing is like I keep going back to how Sony is marketing this thing, and this is what we were talking about before, Matt. Tour this thing around because you have to put it in people's hands for them to believe it. It's to see it to believe it kind of thing. It's almost like a religious experience where I'm going through Horizon. I'm like I've never experienced like a thing like this before. I've never experienced like exhilaration of stabbing like a rope caster into this piece of fabric or whatever, throwing the rope across and like swinging down and like seeing the river run underneath my feet and everything. It just feels like a very fresh and new experience. But yeah, it all comes down to these Sense controllers. I think, I mean, it wasn't hard to do a major blow up over these controllers, but they did it. Like they knocked it out of the park with these things. I love these things, though. I will say, shame on you, Sony, for for those batteries.
Oh, okay.
Once
Really,
again,
eh?
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So you need
I
a
mean-
charger? It's that bad?
Well, I mean, it's all USB-C. You can plug it in virtually
Well,
anywhere.
I guess that the charging port that they're selling is only for the headset, anyways, right?
Well, the headset doesn't need a charge.
So what's that charging port? Is that for the controllers?
That's for the controllers. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's another headset from or another stand from a third party that has
Yeah, I
like
saw that.
The collective minds one,
the
right?
headset going on it.
Yes,
Right?
that you can put the headset on as like a stand, and then they have charging ports in the back. But yeah, typically I get about 5 hours of use out of these bad boys.
Okay.
Which I mean isn't bad because no one in their right mind should be spending 5 hours in VR. You're a lunatic if you are. Sorry. But I think just when you write it down and you see 5 hours battery life,
Like 2 days.
that's kind of sucky.
Yeah.
It's never impacted me to be like, okay, I want to play, PSVR, and I pick up my Sense controllers and they're dead. It's more towards the end of a play session, I get the notification of like, oh, your battery's low, charge them. I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
So it's just a shame that we couldn't get 20 hours of battery life where we don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
How's traversing the UI? Does it feel cumbersome? Like I remember with PSVR 1, it felt weird to have the UI and like go through it. So is it more adaptive, I guess to say the least?
Well, especially
It's-
because like with the original, like using those move controllers, trying to navigate the menus, it was literally like,
was terrible.
oh, it's like literally just like a running the gamut and hoping you landing
Yeah.
on the right spot because again, you didn't have the
Right.
proper way to
Yeah,
interact
I
with
remember
it.
that.
Like,
oh my
it's
god,
terrible.
yeah.
Because it was
I only,
literally
like I said, I only got to play it for a couple hours, and I thought it was absolutely atrocious.
Oh,
to
I
navigate
totally
the
forgot
UI.
about that. That was really tough. No, it's just as fluid, it's just as responsive as well because you're going through the PlayStation UI itself. I mean,
Yeah, no, I get that.
these are just this
Controllers.
is just a dual sense Joy-Con essentially. So you do have like the
Oh, you
analog
just
sticks on
jinxed
each
it.
side.
It's gonna break now, and we're gonna
Yeah,
have
you're
to
gonna get
new
stick
ones.
drift. It's over, boys.
I can't wait till they start bringing in colored ones, and people are gonna be like, "I need it," and be like, "No one can see it."
Yeah, right. I need the ones that look like the original DualShock. That's what I need.
Right.
But navigating the screen, the menus and everything, very responsive, easy. All of it's through the analog sticks and the face buttons anyway. So you're not really.
What's the file size of these games?
I mean, for like a more independent game, you're looking at like nominal
Memory's
gigabytes.
an issue on consoles unless you got the upgrade. I know all three of us got the upgrade because we all bought the same thing. But you didn't get Matt. What happened?
Oh.
Life.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. I honestly don't know about most of them, but for stuff like Moss, it's small.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little boy.
Yeah.
I would think that these games are not big.
No.
I think
I am actually curious to go back now and look at Horizon because I think that would be the biggest game.
Yes, yeah, and I can
Yeah.
imagine. I think kind of my final question before I'll toss over to Cord to see if he's got anything left in the chamber is like, what's been the biggest wow moment for you so far? Like whether it's a game, whether it's like using the controller for the first time, but like that, I feel like thinking back to the original PSVR, like putting that thing on for the first time, looking at like the sense of scale, like you've mentioned, right? Like looking over into like the heist and seeing how big that person was beside me. There were moments that you're like, oh, like this cannot be done elsewhere. What's been like your biggest wow moment with the PSVR 2 so far?
I think it is the Sense controllers.
Yeah.
I'm a stand for them right now. I think there's so much potential here. When we start thinking about future projects that Sony can incorporate here, we go back to Spider-Man in VR. I would love to see how that reacts
That's
to a
motion
Sense
sickness.
controller.
That's
Oh, big
Vomit
time.
City.
That's-
Vomit City.
That's Bomb City.
You're both
Absolutely.
like, I could do it. I could do it. I could do it.
I
Yeah.
would do it though. I would put in the time, but yeah, or like God of War in VR and stuff like that.
Well,
like
that's what I thought. I thought that Super Bowl commercial was like, we're gonna get
Oh.
to throw Leviathan axe. Like that's what it is. Like
I wish.
Kratos
buddy.
axe throwing is a game.
Yeah. No, dude. And I think that it all comes down to the technology in here and how well it works with the headset itself, like the IR sensors and everything. Sony has a really good piece of hardware here. Whether or not they continue to support it
Mm-hmm.
is the big question. I know that they're coming out with like 30 30 plus launch window games. We've got Beat Saber on the horizon and stuff like that. But what does the summer feel like? What does fall? What does 2024 look like? It still remains a question. So I think that they're in a good spot. They just need to kind of
Back it
give
up.
us the goods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we don't get a Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh man.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yes.
that's like the perfect game to do it.
Yeah.
But my final question to you is it worth the price tag? Like you're
I
having
knew
a lot
that
of
was
fun with
coming.
this.
Yeah.
And like I've bought it, Matt's bought it,
Sure.
and like I had to have that conversation with my wife. I was like, I'm not buying this, and this because I'm buying
I
this.
have.
Because it's not cheap, right? It's like if you do the math and you put it together, that's almost $2,000 for the PS5 and the PSVR and all the peripherals.
Yeah. It's a tough sell. It really is. I mean, I'm not beyond knowing, like I was in a very I'm very gracious that PlayStation gave me one, right? So the entire time I'm playing this and I'm reviewing it, I'm writing my review, even talking to you guys, I have to think about, okay, well, I didn't put in the money, but everyone else that is watching this has to.
Yep.
And especially when you look at the value proposition, you're like, they don't even include a game. Like, I think that is one of the biggest missed opportunities here, is that PSVR, the original, came with VR Worlds, something you could tangibly play, demo, especially if that was your first VR experience. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved, and just think of the good graces Sony would have had if they came out and they're like, guess what? Horizon Call of the Mountain is baked
Bundled
into
in.
this game. It's bundled in, or like an Astro's
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Playroom kind of
just
thing.
bring back the original because they get Astro's Playroom is still to this day one of the best games on PS5, and is still the game that Matt and I eventually will have a Kickstarter for.
Yep.
Of give us a Astro's Playroom with all the different worlds being PlayStation games.
Kingdom Hearts is
Give me
Astro.
that game. Just give me the game.
Yeah. So yeah, to my point, I think it's really hard because you can already be invested in the PlayStation ecosystem. You can have a PlayStation 5 set up, but in Canada, you still have to fork out $750 plus a game. Plus, if you want, Gran Turismo 7 or Horizon Call of the Mountain, both of which are going to be system sellers for this hardware.
Yep.
You're looking at $800. Like that's
steep.
That's steep. That's a huge ask for a consumer. That being said, I think that if you are a firm PlayStation PS VR believer or VR enthusiast in general, you'll find a lot of value here. I think that there's future proofing here. I think that they have themselves set up to ride out the rest of this console generation with this hardware here. It's just a huge ask of fork out the money and trust us that we're going to deliver. Two things that, are tough for a consumer coming out of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at this and you're like, man, I really want Horizon, do I have to, go outside my means to buy this hardware to get the game? No, please do not do that. I think that you're fine waiting it out. Let's see what the rest of the year looks like. If they come out and they're like, God of War is coming out in fall, an experience for this hardware. Maybe that's when, everything starts stacking up, where it's like, okay, now we're getting like 3 or 4 in-house first party games and experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is when I pull the trigger. But so far with Horizon, Gran Turismo 7, Resident Evil Village, that's on the horizon as well. It's there, but I don't know if it's worth
not a chance am I playing
$800
Resident
yet.
Evil.
I think it seems
not a chance am I doing that to myself. No.
I'm going to make myself completely, go nuts playing that.
I would poop myself.
Oh,
up until Benevito House, right? That's when we all agree that we're dipping out.
Well, was it on the last PSVR you could do Biohazard. Yeah, you could, and that one has the house. And I remember playing just the demo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, dude, there's no way. There's just no way. You go through the kitchen, everything's fine. No, it's not fine. None of it's fine.
I remember standing at the top of the stairs that lead down into the basement and being like, I sat there and like had to hype myself up to go down those stairs. But Steve, without further ado, again, thank you so much for joining us for the review. We really appreciate your time and you coming and hanging out with us and talking to us all about it. Once more, where can people find your written review, which I know is going to be awesome, and where can people find more of you?
You can find my written review. It's out now on iPhone in Canada. And if you want, easy links for that or any of my other coverage and socials, it's all
In the
down
notes.
there. It's
In the notes.
it's all down there in the notes. At Vegvari.
Perfect. Court, where can people see and hear more from you if they wanted to?
I feel like you do that now just out of spite.
Yep.
You can find me at Court Lalonde, or you can find me on Twitter at Court Lalonde, or you can also find me at our Carpool Gaming on Twitter.
Make sure you go support Steve in all of the places he's making fantastic content the world over. And make sure you also go check out Console Creatures, where he has a fantastic podcast with some other wonderful, wonderful people. As for myself,
a man like Bobby who loves pecans, loves
them.
pecans.
Send him some
He
pecans.
loves
Yeah,
pecans.
honestly, we should just send Bobby a T-shirt with pecans on.
And I'm gonna just say it, Bobby has the best takes. About certain games. But yeah, as for myself, you can find me on Twitter at Matt_SilverSoul. And of course, come hang out with us on the PlayStation Drive each and every week, 1 p.m. Eastern on Mondays here on Carpool Gaming or on your podcast network of choice. Head over to patreon.com/carpoolgaming if you have the means to support. We'd appreciate that too. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.